Chris McKee here in the News 13 Digital Studio, joined today by Professor Mostafa Hassanalian, here today to talk about some of the research he's doing at New Mexico Tech, working on drones and autonomous systems and some really peculiar looking drones. Thanks for joining us here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so as I understand, you're working on developing drones that look like birds in some cases, sometimes using maybe a taxidermied bird as a base. Is that how to describe your work? How do you describe your work?
Yeah, so I have been doing research on drones for like more than 15 years,
Okay.
and I have two master's degree in the flapping wing drones, which are the drones that they look like bird. You know that we have like different configurations of drones. They can be huge UAV or unmanned aerial vehicle with a fixed wing to a smart dust, which are the dust particle, not visible, but they can do whatever drone is doing. So in that category, one example of the drones is flapping wings. So when I was doing research on flapping wings, so we need to study a lot about nature to understand the kinematics and the flights of birds. So that got me to be introduced to the biomimicry, and that's basically all my research that I'm doing here at New Mexico Tech, where we can learn from nature to develop optimized autonomous systems, including drones. So for these specific projects, drones in general, they have like 200 potential application in our daily life, which they are mainly civil applications. And one of the applications that we have been targeting is drones for wildlife monitoring.
Okay.
So currently, quadcopters or hexacopters, there are huge drones that they are used for wildlife monitoring, that they have a potential hazard to the wildlife. They create lots of noise, and also to study the science of the nature, and also the birds. Probably is not a good idea to fly those type of drones that
Yeah.
they have propellers and they create like hazard to the wildlife. So what we have been doing is to develop bio drones that as part of that is robot, a part of that is a taxidermy birds, or there are feathers, or the wing of the birds, or a part of the birds. So we have been doing reverse engineering to see, for example, in a specific bird that we have used their wings or the part of the body. They're like pheasant and the pigeons, those components we have considered, and then we have done reverse engineering to see once the birds are flying, what is their like the flapping frequency, what has been their weight, and all of those characteristics that they had during the time that they were alive. And then with having their structure, we don't need to use artificial material. So because we cannot get the same flight characteristics if you use a membrane like plastics or carbon fibers, it doesn't give us the same efficiency. So we're thinking to use the part of the taxidermy part of the birds and do reverse engineering and make them flyable again.
Wow.
So that has been the main idea behind this project.
You have a few visuals that you said you could share with us on your
Absolutely.
screen. So what are we seeing here?
So here we see like a bunch of elephants that we want to do the wildlife monitoring, and that's something that scientists usually do to see the nature and the wildlife. So these are the type of the drones that are currently used. And as I said, they create lots of noise, and sometimes they create like the sound would scare the animals, and they would scatter them, so they cannot follow them. So that was the reason that we came up with this idea to use the taxidermy part of the birds and use that as a part of our bio drone. So this is a short video which shows a small flapping wing drones with attached hummingbird's wings, which would flap with a high frequency.
Wow.
And here these are the concepts that we have developed. So we have been looking at combination of the flapping wing drones and also the different parts of the birds. And I will discuss more about the application sides of this type of technology that we are working on. So in this video, if you look closely, you will see that how wings are flexible. If we use the artificial material, we cannot get the perfect like flapping motion. Because it's the wings on the birds are responsible to generate lift and thrust in the same time. But the other type of the drones, they have the propellers, they have the motors, and the wing is generating lift, and those propulsion system is generating thrust. But in the bird, as you can see in this video, they are having two angles during their flapping motions, which include flapping down, which is called downstroke, and flapping up, which is an upstroke. So the birds during the time that they're flapping down, they're mainly generating lift. But in the time that they're flapping up, they generate thrust, and that would allow them to move forward. So this wings, which is combined of the feathers and the bones, it provide us the flexibility that we need for flapping motion. So they are more efficient than using the normal flapping wing drones. So there are lots of potential applications for this. I want to talk about two main applications that we have considered beside the wildlife monitoring for these bio drones or taxidermy flying drones. One area which has been known for centuries is studying the V formation of the birds, where basically the birds flying in the V to save more energy. So here near Socorro, down here, we have a Bosque del Apache wildlife. So once we were looking at the flight of the birds, one thing which was not well known is that how birds, they decide to switch their position in a flock, because they have different age, different level of health. Some of them, they have more experience during migration. So for example, Canadian geese, they can fly up to 2,400 kilometers or 1,500 miles in a day and a half, which is an amazing. 7 management rules that researchers, they have inspired from Canadian geese. Who should be the leader, when they switch the leader, and how they switch, and how they can achieve these long distances to work together. So we have developed some like algorithms to study this and some fundamentals. So there's like some probably crazy mathematics here and modeling that we as an engineer we usually do. And what we found out through our experimental studies, through just watching the wildlife, was that the birds can have about more than 40% enhancement once they are starting to switch. Okay. And usually the birds at the middle position, they save more energy than the birds at the leader position. So usually to study this, researchers, they have been trying to fly with the paragliders with the birds, which sometimes might not be a good idea to fly with the birds in that way. So the technology that we are developing here would allow us to fly with those birds. Wow. And find out how they are going to achieve this, how they're going to switch. We basically are flying the same bird as them, with them, so they don't see it as a robot. It's not going to distract them, but we can monitor them and understand their flight. So this is one of the potential. We have done a lot of like studies in a computational way, as well as we have done some experimental studies, as you see it here, to measure the efficiency of this formation flight. So these are like a couple of tests that we have done in our laboratory here at New Mexico Tech, and here we have shown that how this technology is helping this. And here it shows that how we can simulate the airflow around it. So this is in the lab space. If we want to understand this phenomenon more from the physics space and the kinematics, so we should do the actual experiments and flying with the birds. And this taxidermy flying birds is actually allow us to learn more about this phenomenon, which is unknown in this area. And the other application I can talk about that. So this is a research we have been doing for a couple of years, which also has got a lot of attention of the scientists, is the coloration of the birds. So if you ask a biologist what are the reasons for colorations of different types of birds, they have two reasons. They want to attract mate or they want to do the camouflage. Since we are all from New Mexico, if we go outside during the summer and if I have a black shirt or t-shirt and go out, I feel more hot than having a white color. So if you look at the migratory birds like albatross, sooty tern, black skimmer, or most of the birds that flying over the ocean, they have black color at the top of their wings and they have white color at the bottom side. So once we did like a couple of modeling experimental study, we find out that the black color is absorbing heat. It changed the flow patterns around the wing and would help them to save more energy. And this is a paper we published like 2 months ago in Journal of Bionic Engineering and explaining why birds, they have different colors in different, I mean, black and white color in different parts of their wing. So, and our study showed that once we did the experimental studies in the wind tunnel, the temperature difference between the black and white color is about 25 degrees Celsius during the day, during the noon, that they are receiving the maximum sun irradiations. We did some like airfoil, we tested in wind tunnel, and we find out that their efficiency, with just increasing 10 degrees Celsius temperature difference, the lift to drag ratio can be enhanced more than 150%. And now what we have been looking at, and I want to explain why this taxidermy drone birds are going to help us on this area, is that most of this study we have done in wind tunnel, we have done with the wings that are not in during the flight. So the area that we have been looking at, that if you look at the cranes, the pelicans, or most of the birds, their wing tips are black. And again, from biological perspective, the black color is coming from the concentration of the melanin, which biologists are saying that would increase the strength of the feathers in the wingtip. But our theory and what research that we are doing, we have another reason for this, which the black color is going to be hotter than white color. So it would change the flow patterns in the wingtips and would allow them to save more energy. And we are trying to integrate this to the aviation industry. Wow. To increase the efficiency of the airplanes. Imagine that we have a very small percentage of drag reduction, and you can think about how much energy we can save because we have flight per second across the world. So in order to study this coloration effects, it's much probably more realistic for us to see the actual birds, how they're behaving, because they are flapping, they're not fixed wing. And that's another particular applications that we have been looking on the colorations of the birds. So we can get the feathers on those flapping wings or those taxidermy birds or the actual wings of the birds, integrated to those mechanisms that can provide a flapping motion and record the data to the sensors that we are having on those taxidermy birds. So it would allow us to understand this better and apply this to the aviation industry.
It is fascinating stuff, and to hear some of the potential even commercial applications that are out there is really neat. So I think you answered that. You know, one of the first questions when I showed some of my coworkers this video, they asked why, and it really seems like, sort of in summary, there's potential, you know, energy efficiency applications that could be applied in the commercial environment, as well as there's the sort of biological understanding of, you know, birds as we see them out there. The flying V isn't just because it's pretty; it has an actual, you know, use in terms of energy savings, I think, as you explained. Are there any other potential applications for this? And I know one that has come up has been the discussion about potentially military applications. You know, there are always people think, you know, disguising drones, you know, that's maybe the next level of a military application, as we've seen even in, you know, if we look at our current events, right, Ukraine and Russia, the use of drone technology has been significant in that conflict. But are there any, just to ask you the question, are there any other potential applications that you see for this type of research and technology?
Very good question. So I can open this question. So definitely any technologies which is coming to our like society, it has both sides, right? So for this specific application, I cannot deny it that it cannot be used, because also this is like a bird. Looks like birds, can fly. People are not going to notice that it's a flying bird. But our main area that we have been focused for this is mainly for civil application. I mean, drones, they have both applications. There are military applications, and there are like 200 civil application. So I can discuss more. For example, one of the concept that probably in the future, the next couple of years, we will see it, is concept of the advanced air mobility, that how drones are going to be integrated to our cities. So then, as an example, I can mention during this pandemic, I mean, when everywhere was locked down, one of the area that people was looking at that how drones can be used for delivering food or vaccine delivery, right? So that's one of them. And then there are basically some concern regarding using drones in the cities because they're creating noise. There are like, but besides of their positive like applications, they might have some drawbacks and some concern regarding this. So for example, they can be used for emergency, like you can have ambulance drones, you can have drones for bridge inspection, for infrastructure inspection. They can be used like for earthquake disasters, like what's happening in Turkey right now. So they have like lots of application, but as I said, the same applications can be in the military. Is the same for this project. So it's a drone basically, but it looks like bird. It might have some advantage like the other drones, which is probably not visible. But as I said, we have been mainly focused on wildlife monitoring and to help science of understanding the flight of the birds and the nature to use for energy saving in the aviation industry or other applications that they can have. For example, you mentioned V. The V also can be used in the drone, that drones can fly in the V formation to save energy to do some missions. So this is a concept we have been working on, is how drones can be integrated to our cities for plenty of application that they can have. So this is a concept of advanced air mobility as well as smart cities, that we want to have drones integrated to our city, where we have ambulance drones. They can be used for search and rescue. They can be used for pollution monitoring, for infrastructure inspection. They can be used for cleaning the dust over the solar panel at the roof of our houses, or another potential application that they can have. So in order to integrate drones to our cities, we need a housing for drones. And that brought us to the concepts of this taxidermy birds also can be a part of that. Oh, wow. So these are like trees inspired vertiport or vertical airports for future drones that we currently at New Mexico Tech are developing, which if you look at the trees, the birds can land over the trees, they make their nest there, right? So we have a squirrel living in the trees, we have the wasp or honeybees that they create the hives over the trees. Right. So we have been looking at these concepts. So whenever a new technology comes to our world, so it's really important that how we are going to introduce this type of technologies to the people. So we have been looking at the tree structured vertiports, which they can house different types of the drones, including it can be those taxidermy birds drones. I mean, one of the concern about the quadcopter is that they have the propellers. If something happens and they crash, so that there's potential hazard there. Right. So they're going to be dangerous. But those taxidermy birds, they are like birds. They are flapping wings. So there is less risk to using them as a drones for inspection, for monitoring, for other applications that they might have. So there is like a lot. I cannot deny none of those applications, but we have been, as I said, we have been looking at more civil side of these drones.
Yeah, it is really a pretty incredible work, and just seeing drone technology that's been out there for so long. It is very similar to helicopters, right? But they have obviously they have more mobility. You've yet to really see drones on a mass schedule looking quite like the plane technology of birds, obviously. So really neat to be able to see kind of this next chapter happening here. I wanted to ask you as well, what is next for you, your research? What should people maybe expect to hear from you guys next in terms of maybe publishing or working on?
I can share my new projects that we haven't we recently have been we have started to work on that. So most of my research area is biomimicry. It means that how we can inspire from nature to develop new system. And I want to show a couple of them
Okay.
that they have potential application in many fields. So for example, for planetary exploration. So this is an area that most of my graduate students, they have been focused on this area. So this is, for example, a grasshopper. We have been looking at jumping robots for lunar exploration, inspiring from this natural species. Or here I can show a roly-poly, which is a pillbug inspired robot. I have been working with a couple of students at New Mexico Tech that they're participating in NASA competition to develop a novel locomotion mechanism and robots for planetary exploration. And one of our interesting ideas that we are currently working on that, so probably is really interesting, is culturally inspired drones. Beside the biological inspired drones, bio-inspired drones, the cultural inspired drones. So as an example here, we see the dandelion seeds. So dandelion seeds, they can fly up to 100 miles just through the winds. So we have been developing these micro drones that they are like in a couple of grams, or the new one that we have developed is 0.3 grams, which they can be dispersed through the wind, and they can collect information like the humidity, temperature, the type of the gases, and there are lots of application for this type of drones. And I want to specifically mention one of those areas. So our concept is to develop these drones, and I can play a video of this, that how they will be dispersed, and through the winds, because they are lightweight, they can move and disperse in any environment. So one of the potential application for this type of concept is for studying the Martian lava tubes. So NASA has been looking at the lava tubes as potential habitat for the astronauts in future, because on Mars, it's a very extreme condition, high radiation, low density,
Right.
and they have found like thousands of those open entrances for volcanic caves or lava tubes, but they have not been able to send any robots there. So the new drone technology that we are developing right now is having a drone can carry this like pillbug or bio-inspired robots. They can get into these lava tubes and they start to walk. And since they have open entrances, so there is a wind going through these lava tubes. So then would start to dispersing those dandelion-inspired micro drones. So we are looking at thousands of them that they can be dispersed and they can collect information. So beside this application, there are lots of other applications in agriculture, as well as the monitoring or the water resources, or the level of humidity for the weather. So there are many potential applications for this new technology that we're developing right now.
Wow. Well, it is fascinating again, and I keep landing on that word because it is just really neat to be able to look at this stuff, and you realize how much technology has come forward in, micro-sizing itself to mimic what life is out there already, and obviously nature's designs are some of the most ingenious out there. So, pretty incredible. Doctor, we appreciate you joining us here in the digital studio. Thank you for explaining your work for us.
Thank you for having me.